For years, the story sounded settled. India was told by officials, analysts, and headlines that its air force was ahead. Better jets, better training, better technology. On paper, it looked convincing. Then the air confrontation with Pakistan happened, and that confidence cracked. What shocked observers wasn't just that aircraft were lost or missions failed. Militaries expect friction in combat. What shocked people was how wide the gap between expectation and reality turned out to be. The outcome didn't match the story Indians had been hearing for years. It wasn't a narrow scrape or a lucky punch. It felt like a system failing under real pressure. Think of it like this. Imagine a student who tops every mock exam, praised by teachers, featured in school newsletters, then completely freezes during the real final. That's not just a bad day. That's a sign something deeper is wrong. Inside India's Air Command, this wasn't treated as a small tactical loss. It landed as a strategic shock. A moment that forces generals to ask uncomfortable questions about training, planning, technology, and assumptions they had trusted for a long time. And that leads to the question that matters most, and the one this video is really about. If India's aircraft were superior on paper, why did reality look so different in the sky? That question doesn't have a simple answer. But once you start pulling on that thread, it unravels politics, procurement decisions, military culture, and the hidden mechanics of modern air warfare. And that's where the story truly begins. When military reality clashes with political messaging, governments rarely slow down. They speed up. After the air confrontation, reports began circulating that India's leadership wanted to fast-track the purchase of more Rafale fighter jets, skipping the normal tender and evaluation process. These procedures usually take years: testing, negotiations, cost reviews. But now the push was for speed, not patience. Why the rush? Because timing matters. Elections matter. Credibility matters. For a government, admitting uncertainty after a public show of confidence is dangerous. It creates doubt not only about military strength, but about leadership itself. So the instinctive response is often, act fast, show decisiveness, change the headline. Buying more advanced jets is a visible move. It signals action. It tells the public, we've identified the problem, and we're fixing it. But here's the tension. Fast decisions are rarely the same as good decisions, especially in military procurement. Think of it like a company whose flagship product suddenly fails in the market. Instead of redesigning the system, management orders more of the same product, just faster and at higher cost, hoping volume will solve a design flaw. It rarely does. Inside India, this created a dilemma. Move quickly to restore confidence, or pause and risk admitting deeper structural problems. Bypassing procedures saves time, but it also removes safeguards, the very checks meant to prevent expensive mistakes. And this is where defense procurement becomes less about strategy and more about buying time, politically and psychologically. That pressure didn't just come from outside. It also collided with resistance from within the military itself. People who had seen the performance up close and weren't convinced that repeating the same purchase would change the outcome. On the surface, everything looked unified. There were victory statements, patriotic messaging, and days of public celebration. To the outside world, it appeared that the system had worked and confidence remained intact. But inside the Air Force, the mood was very different. Senior officers don't judge success by headlines or ceremonies. They judge it by radar logs, mission outcomes, and after-action reports. And those documents don't care about politics. They record what actually happened, who saw whom first, who fired first, and who never even got the chance. That's where resistance began to form. Many inside the military understood a hard truth. Buying more of the same aircraft would not fix the underlying problem. Losses, or near losses, aren't always caused by a single platform failing. They often point to system-wide issues: how aircraft communicate, how targets are identified, how pilots receive information, and how decisions are made under pressure. This is why internal opposition matters. It shows that institutions are not monolithic. Public messaging aims for unity, but professional militaries are built on disagreement, analysis, and uncomfortable conclusions. There's also a well-known gap between political storytelling and military evaluation. Politicians need clean narratives, win or lose, strong or weak. Militaries deal in gradients, partial success, delayed detection, missed opportunities. That difference creates friction, especially after a public shock. And once officers start questioning whether the issue is the jet itself or the entire combat system around it, the discussion inevitably shifts away from politics and toward mechanics. When most people imagine air combat, they picture dogfights, two jets twisting through the sky, pilots relying on reflexes and skill. That image is dramatic, but it's also outdated. Modern air combat is usually decided long before pilots ever see each other. What really matters are things you can't see from the ground: sensors, radar range, data links, and missiles. Think of it less like a duel and more like a game of chess played at high speed, where the player who sees the board first usually wins. Here's a simple way to understand it. If one aircraft detects its opponent 50 or 100 kilometers earlier, that pilot can choose when to engage or whether to disengage entirely. The other pilot may already be targeted before they even know they're being tracked. This is why aircraft don't operate alone. A modern fighter is part of a combat system that includes airborne early warning aircraft, ground-based radar satellites and data-sharing networks, missile guidance, and electronic warfare support. Brand names and price tags matter far less than how well these pieces work together. It's like owning a high-end smartphone but using slow internet, outdated software, and a weak battery. The hardware may look impressive, but the experience falls apart under real conditions. So when analysts look at the India-Pakistan air encounter, the key question isn't just which jet is better. It's which side's system could detect, decide, and strike first. Once you understand that, the focus naturally shifts to two critical components that dominate modern air battles: missiles and radar. The invisible battlefield that decides outcomes without spectacle. If modern air combat is a game of chess, then radar is the eyesight and missiles are the reach. Whoever sees farther and strikes first usually wins, often without the opponent ever getting a fair chance to respond. Let's break this down simply. Radar determines who detects whom first. Missiles determine whether that detection turns into a kill. A small advantage in either one doesn't just add up, it multiplies. A useful comparison is night driving. If one car has high-beam headlights and thermal vision, while the other has dim lights, the driver with better vision can react earlier, change lanes, or stop completely. By the time the second driver notices danger, it may already be too late. Radar technology works the same way. Newer radar materials allow longer detection range, better tracking accuracy, stronger resistance to electronic jamming. Missiles follow the same pattern. Newer generations don't just fly farther, they receive mid-course updates, adjust flight paths dynamically, and retain energy longer during the final approach. This is why air combat today often ends before pilots even realize they are under attack. Now here's where the gap becomes dangerous. Military technology doesn't improve in straight lines. It improves in steps. Incremental upgrades like software tweaks or minor range increases cannot catch up to a leap in radar material or missile generation. It's like trying to outrun a motorcycle by improving your bicycle's tires. No matter how good the tires are, the gap remains. And this matters even more when future upgrades are already in motion. Once one side begins deploying newer radar and missile systems at scale, the advantage compounds year after year. At this point, the debate stops being about individual aircraft and becomes something more uncomfortable: labels versus reality. Because calling a jet advanced or fifth generation doesn't automatically mean it can survive in this invisible battlefield. In military discussions, few labels carry as much weight as fifth generation. It sounds definitive, like a guarantee of superiority. But in reality, that label often hides more than it explains. A fifth-generation fighter isn't a single technology. It's the sum of many hard problems solved at the same time: stealth shaping, advanced sensors, secure data links, powerful engines, and, most importantly, the ability to produce and sustain all of that at scale. Here's the mistake many people make. They assume that once an aircraft is declared fifth generation, it automatically competes on equal terms with others in that category. That's not how engineering or war works. Think of it like restaurants. Two places can both be called five-star, but one may have world-class chefs, reliable suppliers, and consistent quality, while the other barely meets the checklist and struggles to serve customers every night. The label is the same, the experience is not. Real capability depends on things most people never see. Can the country produce advanced engines in large numbers? Can it manufacture high-end chips and sensors domestically? Can it maintain stealth coatings and complex systems over years of operation? Can it replace losses quickly in a prolonged conflict? History is full of advanced prototypes that looked impressive but never appeared in meaningful numbers. An aircraft that exists in small batches or relies on fragile supply chains may be technologically interesting, but militarily limited. This is why production scale matters as much as design. A jet that can be built, upgraded, and supported consistently will outperform a more ambitious design that struggles to leave the factory. Once you look past the labels, a deeper problem emerges. Some countries aren't just choosing between aircraft, they're choosing between dependence and autonomy. At this stage, the problem is no longer just technical, it becomes geopolitical. India's strategic position today is uncomfortable. Its traditional suppliers are less capable or constrained, while newer partners are unwilling to share their most critical technologies. That leaves India dependent, but without leverage. Arms suppliers don't just sell equipment. They decide. What technology is shared? What is withheld? What can be upgraded later? And what can be cut off in a crisis? This is why buying weapons is not the same as owning capability. A useful comparison is energy. A country that imports electricity generators but doesn't control fuel, spare parts, or software never truly controls its power grid. The lights stay on only as long as suppliers allow. The same logic applies to modern air power. Advanced fighters rely on specialized engines, high-end semiconductors, sensitive software and mission data, and continuous upgrades and maintenance. Without access to these, even the most expensive aircraft becomes fragile over time. This creates a strategic trap. If you rely too heavily on one supplier, you risk stagnation or pressure. If you try to diversify too quickly, you lose standardization and efficiency. And if no partner fully trusts you, true technology transfer never happens. That's why arms purchases alone cannot create military autonomy. Without a strong domestic industrial base or a deeply trusted alliance, options shrink instead of expand. And this leads to the hardest conclusion of all. Air superiority is not something you can buy off the shelf. When you zoom out and connect all the pieces, one truth becomes unavoidable. Air superiority is not bought. It is built. It's built slowly, over decades, not just with aircraft, but with pilots, engineers, factories, software, chips, doctrine, and experience. A fighter jet is only the visible tip of a very deep iceberg. You can spend billions importing advanced platforms, but if your sensors lag behind, your missiles are outmatched, your supply chains are fragile, or your upgrades depend on foreign approval, then the advantage disappears the moment real pressure is applied. Shortcuts are tempting, especially after a shock. They look decisive. They calm public fear. They create headlines. But in military history, shortcuts almost never change outcomes. They only delay hard reforms. The real danger isn't losing a battle. It's believing your own story after reality has already disagreed. Perception gaps are just as dangerous as capability gaps, because they cause leaders to prepare for the wrong war. For future conflicts, this lesson matters far beyond one country or one air clash. The nations that dominate the skies won't be the ones that buy the most expensive jets, but the ones that control the entire system behind them. So the question for viewers isn't just who won or who lost. It's this: who is actually building power and who is only renting it? If you want to dig deeper, question official narratives, or explore what really decides air wars, missiles, pilots, industry, or training, let me know in the comments. That's where the next chapter of this story begins.